Have you ever wondered what really happens when greed poisons a family? When money doesn't just change hands, but tears people apart? This story begins in a house that once represented love and legacy, but now it's about to become a battlefield. Before we get into the story, tell us in the comment section where you are watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave your honest review. The Hawthorne estate had seen better days. Once magnificent, its tall windows now bore cracks, and the garden, once a sea of roses, looked tired and forgotten. But inside, tension pulsed like electricity. The family had gathered for the reading of a will, a moment they believed would secure their future. At the head of the table sat Evelyn Hawthorne, 78 years old. Frail in appearance, her hands trembled slightly as they rested on her cane. But don't let the surface fool you. Behind those soft, wrinkled features lived a mind sharper than broken glass. Evelyn had seen many storms in her lifetime, and today she sensed another one brewing. Her son Jason leaned back in his chair, the picture of confidence. At 45, he carried himself like a man used to getting his way. The perfect suit, the polished shoes, the charming smile that could disarm anyone, at least on the surface. But beneath that charm was something darker, ambition without conscience. By his side sat Clara, his wife. Beautiful, poised, with an icy elegance that could freeze a room. At 42, she had mastered the art of silence, speaking only when her words could cut the deepest. She didn't just want wealth, she wanted control. And then, at the far end of the table sat Maya, 25 years old, Evelyn's granddaughter. Quiet, thoughtful, kind in a way that felt almost out of place in a family like this. She wasn't dressed in expensive fabrics, nor did she wear diamonds like Clara. Instead, she wore sincerity. And in this family, sincerity was often mistaken for weakness. The lawyer cleared his throat, papers trembling slightly in his hands as though even he could sense the weight of what was about to unfold. As per the wishes of the late Mr. Hawthorne, he began, the estate shall be divided among the family. Properties, assets, investments, all accounted for. The room leaned forward in anticipation. Evelyn watched them closely, Jason's foot tapping impatiently, Clara's thin smile fixed in place, Maya's nervous hands twisting together in her lap. And, the lawyer continued, a trust of $1 million has been set aside for Maya Hawthorne. The room froze. Maya's eyes widened, her lips parting in disbelief. $1 million? Her? She wasn't expecting anything beyond maybe a small keepsake. Evelyn turned her gaze toward Maya, a small, knowing smile touching her lips. But across the table, Jason's jaw tightened. Clara's painted nails tapped against her glass, a rhythm of irritation she couldn't hide. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. For me? Yes, the lawyer confirmed. Your grandfather wanted you to have it, to support your education, your career, and your future. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the steady tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. Then Jason laughed, a low, dismissive chuckle. Surely, he said smoothly, there must be some mistake. Maya is young. She doesn't know how to manage such money. It would be irresponsible to simply hand it to her. Clara chimed in, her voice calm but cutting. He's right. $1 million in the hands of a girl with no experience? That's not what father would have wanted. We, as her guardians, should oversee it. For her own good. Maya flinched at the words. For her own good. The same phrase they had used to dismiss her dreams, her choices, her independence. Evelyn said nothing. Her face was unreadable. But her eyes, those sharp, watchful eyes, took in every flicker of envy, every manipulative word. The meeting ended, but the storm was only beginning. Later that evening, Jason and Clara retreated to Jason's study. Heavy curtains blocked the moonlight, and the faint smell of whiskey lingered in the air. Jason paced, his voice sharp. We're not letting her keep that money, Clara. $1 million? Handed to her like a gift from heaven? No. That's ours. Clara's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then we take it. Simple. We've done harder things before. And that's exactly what they did. Over the next few days, Jason manipulated the lawyer, pressuring him, threatening him, bribing him. Clara, with her cold precision, forged documents and twisted words until, on paper, it seemed as though the $1 million trust had never belonged to Maya at all. Instead, it quietly slid into their own accounts, hidden under layers of financial trickery. When Maya asked about her inheritance, the lawyer shifted uncomfortably. His words stumbled. There was a misunderstanding. The funds were allocated differently. You won't be receiving that money after all. The words hit her like a blow. $1 million. Gone. Just like that. Maya's voice cracked. But it was meant for me. He wanted me to have it. Clara placed a hand on her shoulder, feigning sympathy. Oh, darling, sometimes these things don't go the way we hope. But you'll be fine. You've always been fine. Maya turned away, tears burning her eyes. And Evelyn? She still said nothing. Sitting in her chair by the fireplace, she looked every bit the fragile old woman. Quiet, helpless, powerless. At least, that's what they thought. But when Jason and Clara, smug in their victory, whispered behind closed doors, they never noticed the small device hidden on the mantelpiece. They never noticed the faint red light blinking. Evelyn was recording everything, the betrayal, the greed, the lies, every word, every whisper. They were already hers. She leaned back in her chair, a faint smile playing on her lips. For now, she would play the part of the forgotten matriarch. The weak, the powerless. But Evelyn Hawthorne had lived too long, seen too much, to let this pass. Her son and his wife thought they had won. But they had just stepped into her game, and this was only the beginning. Weeks passed. But within the Hawthorne estate, time didn't heal wounds. It deepened them. On the surface, everything looked calm. The family gathered once more for a dinner that was meant to feel normal. But beneath the clinking of silverware and the polite conversation, tension hung thick in the air. The mansion itself seemed to reflect the change. Fresh coats of paint gleamed on the walls, new chandeliers sparkled above the dining table, and expensive floral arrangements filled the corners of the room. Jason and Clara had wasted no time putting their stolen fortune to use. The house wore their greed like a crown. Jason sat at the head of the table, his voice booming with pride as he bragged about his latest investments. "You wouldn't believe the return I'm getting on this property," he said, raising his glass. "It's only a matter of time before we double what we've put in." Clara laughed softly, dressed in a gown that shimmered under the chandelier light. "And the renovations, well, we couldn't let the estate look so tired, could we? Father would have wanted it to shine again." Their words dripped with arrogance. But across the table, Maya sat silent, her plate barely touched. Every boast, every brag was like salt rubbed into an open wound. She knew that the chandeliers above her head and the diamonds around Clara's neck should have been hers to benefit from. Not as luxury, but as security, a future, her future. Later that night, when the dishes had been cleared and the laughter faded, Maya slipped into the quiet sitting room where Evelyn rested by the fire. Her voice was soft, breaking with frustration. "Grandma, I don't know what to do. They took everything. That money was my chance, my freedom. Now it's gone, and I have no power to fight them. I feel invisible." Evelyn turned her gaze from the fire to her granddaughter. Her eyes, still sharp despite her frail frame, studied Maya carefully. She reached out, placing a hand over Maya's trembling fingers. "My child," Evelyn said slowly, her tone steady, "the greedy always leave crumbs. And crumbs, when followed carefully, lead you straight to the feast they tried to hide. We don't need to strike yet. We just need to watch. They'll expose themselves." Maya frowned, confused. "Crumbs?" Evelyn leaned back, her lips curling into the faintest smile. "They can't help it. Greed makes people careless." And as if to prove Evelyn's words true, Maya began to notice things. Little things at first. Receipts left on the kitchen counter, half-shredded bank statements poking out of the wastebasket, carelessly discarded invoices for expensive purchases. Maya gathered them quietly, one by one, slipping them into her notebook. Each piece was small, meaningless on its own. But Evelyn's words echoed in her mind. The greedy always leave crumbs. The following week, during another dinner, Clara couldn't resist flaunting her triumph. She leaned across the table, her icy blue eyes fixed on Maya. "You know," she said casually, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "you shouldn't dwell on things you can't have. That inheritance, you'll never see a dime of it. Some things just aren't meant for you." Maya's cheeks burned, shame and anger rising in her chest. But before she could respond, Evelyn's voice cut through the air. Calm, deliberate, dangerous. "Are you sure about that, Clara?" The table fell silent. Jason's fork froze midair. Clara's confident smile faltered for the briefest moment. Evelyn didn't move, didn't raise her voice. She simply returned to cutting her food, as if nothing had happened. But her words hung in the air like smoke, refusing to dissipate. Clara laughed it off, but the unease lingered. Later, in the privacy of their room, Jason turned to her, his voice sharp. You shouldn't taunt her. Mother's not as weak as she looks. Clara scoffed, slipping off her diamond necklace. She's an old woman with no power. What's she gonna do? Lecture us to death? Don't be ridiculous. But Jason wasn't convinced. His mother's eyes haunted him. That look, calm, knowing, wasn't the look of someone defeated. It was the look of someone waiting, watching. He tried to shake it off. But paranoia has a way of seeping into the cracks of even the most confident minds. That night, while the house settled into silence, Evelyn sat in her study. The dim glow of a lamp lit her face as she carefully organized the scraps Maya had collected. Receipts, statements, careless clues of a crime hidden in plain sight. She placed them neatly into a folder, her hands steady despite her age. Then, with deliberate slowness, she reached for the phone. Her fingers dialed a number from memory, a number she hadn't used in years. After a few rings, a deep voice answered. This is Carter. Evelyn's lips curved into a quiet smile. It's been a long time. I need your help again. The man on the other end hesitated. Evelyn? After all these years? Yes, she said firmly. And this time, it's personal. She slid the folder of evidence across the desk. My son and his wife believe they've outsmarted me, but they don't realize they've already trapped themselves. I just need you to make sure the world sees it. The private investigator agreed, his voice steady but curious. What's the endgame? Evelyn's eyes glinted in the lamplight, sharp as ever. Revenge, she whispered. And not the kind that's whispered in shadows, the kind that leaves them with nothing but the truth they tried to bury. As she set the phone down, Evelyn leaned back in her chair. The cracks in her family had widened, and soon those cracks would shatter into an earthquake that Jason and Clara could never survive. Because Evelyn Hawthorne wasn't just keeping score. She was preparing the first move in a game only she knew how to win. The quiet halls of the Hawthorne estate seemed almost too calm in the weeks that followed. But make no mistake, beneath that calm, a storm was brewing. Evelyn, the matriarch who everyone assumed was powerless, now held the first pieces of the puzzle. And when her investigator returned with his report, those pieces snapped into place. Offshore accounts, the investigator explained, sliding a thick file across Evelyn's desk. Jason and Clara weren't subtle. They funneled Maya's inheritance through a series of shell companies. But here's the thing. They left a digital trail. Greed always leaves fingerprints, Evelyn. They thought they were clever, but they've practically signed their names on the theft. Evelyn leaned forward, her sharp eyes scanning the documents. Each page was proof. Proof of betrayal, proof of greed, proof of a crime hidden in plain sight. She let out a soft breath, her voice calm but laced with steel. Good, she whispered. Very good. Now let's see how long they can keep smiling once the walls close in. But Evelyn knew better than to confront them directly. A storm needs patience. So, she chose her weapon carefully. Deception. From that day forward, Evelyn played her role to perfection. She became the forgetful grandmother, the frail old woman whose mind seemed to slip in and out of clarity. She forgot. Conversations, misplaced objects, repeated questions. Jason and Clara bought into it immediately. At dinner, Evelyn would ask the same thing twice, smiling innocently as though she hadn't just heard the answer. Jason would chuckle to himself. Clara would roll her eyes. And slowly they began to speak more freely in her presence, convinced that Evelyn wasn't sharp enough to notice. But Evelyn noticed everything. Every whisper, every boast, every slip of the tongue. And as she sat quietly, playing the part of the fragile matriarch, she was secretly recording every word. Meanwhile, Maya was changing too. Once timid, once beaten down by betrayal, she was beginning to find her strength. With Evelyn's guidance, she documented everything she discovered, photographs of receipts, copies of bank statements, even the careless conversations she overheard. Courage, Maya, Evelyn told her one evening. The truth is heavy, yes, but once revealed it crushes the liars beneath it. You have more power than you realize. Maya nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. For the first time, she began to believe it. And then came Evelyn's next move. One crisp morning, she summoned her lawyer to the estate. They met privately in her study, the doors locked, the curtains drawn. I want to arrange a final family meeting, Evelyn said, her voice calm but commanding. "Tell them I wish to settle the remainder of my estate before I pass. Let them believe I'm rushing to put my affairs in order." The lawyer raised a brow. "You understand what this will cause? Jason and Clara will expect more money." Evelyn's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Exactly, that's the point. I want them greedy. I want them hungry. The hungrier they are, the deeper they'll bite into the trap." And so, the invitation was sent. Jason and Clara didn't hesitate for a second. The thought of even more wealth dangled in front of them was irresistible. When the night of the announcement arrived, Evelyn leaned into her role with masterful precision. She sat at the head of the table, her voice quivering just enough to sound weak. "My dear family," she began, her tone solemn, "time is not kind to me anymore. I feel it in my bones, and before I leave this world, I wish to ensure everything is settled." Jason and Clara exchanged quick glances, excitement flashing in their eyes. Evelyn continued, her voice soft but deliberate. "There is another trust, one larger than the first. I want it handled wisely, carefully." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "And I've been thinking, perhaps it should go to the person most capable of managing it." Clara's smile widened like a knife. Jason's hand tightened on the tablecloth. They leaned forward eagerly, desperate to hear more. Maya, meanwhile, felt a flicker of confusion and suspicion. She glanced at Evelyn, who met her eyes with a look so subtle, so quick, it was almost imperceptible. But in that single glance, Maya understood. This was no surrender. This was bait. Jason cleared his throat, his voice dripping with false humility. "Mother, you know we've always managed the estate responsibly. You can trust us." Clara nodded in agreement, her tone sweet but laced with greed. "Yes, Evelyn, we only want what's best for the family." Evelyn lowered her gaze, playing her part. "Yes, perhaps you're right." And with those words, Jason and Clara's greed peaked. They believed victory was within reach. That soon, the second trust would fall into their hands just as easily as the first. But what they didn't know was this. Evelyn had already rewritten her will. She had already set in motion a public unveiling, one that would expose them in front of everyone who mattered. The final family meeting they were so eager for wasn't a gift. It was a trap. Every smile they wore, every lie they spoke, was only tightening the noose around their own necks. And Evelyn Hawthorne, frail and quiet in her chair, hid her satisfaction behind the mask of a fragile grandmother. The game was almost over. And soon, the world would know exactly what Jason and Clara had done. The grand family hall was heavy with silence, the kind of silence that makes every heartbeat feel like thunder in your ears. Crystal chandeliers glowed above, throwing fractured light across the polished oak table where the entire family sat. Some leaned forward with anticipation, others stiffened with suspicion. At the head of the table sat Evelyn, the matriarch, calm, regal, her silver hair catching the golden light. On her right, the family lawyer shuffled a thick folder of documents, and beside him, an investigator sat quietly, eyes sharp, observing. Across the room, Jason lounged back in his chair, smugness practically dripping from his smile. Beside him, Clara crossed her legs, tapping her manicured nails against the table, her eyes gleaming like someone already tasting victory. They thought this was their moment, their triumph, and Evelyn let them believe it, until the very last second. The lawyer cleared his throat, his voice echoing. "Per Evelyn Hawthorne's request, I am here today to reveal the final disposition of her estate." Gasps and murmurs spread across the room. Everyone knew Evelyn's wealth was vast, spanning properties, investments, and trust funds worth millions. Generations could be secured with what she left behind. Jason straightened his tie, a smug grin stretching wider. Clara leaned in, whispering, "This is it, we'll finally have it all." Evelyn's lips curled into the faintest smile, not of pride, but of quiet satisfaction. The lawyer continued. "After careful consideration, and in light of recent developments, Evelyn Hawthorne has chosen to leave her entire estate, assets, properties, and holdings to Maya Hawthorne." The words dropped like a bomb in the room. A stunned silence followed. Then, chaos. "What?" Jason shot up so fast his chair screeched across the marble floor. "This must be a mistake." Clara's voice cracked, her perfect composure shattering in an instant, but the lawyer's face remained impassive as he turned another page. "There is no mistake. Furthermore, we have evidence to present regarding Jason and Clara's actions." The investigator rose, stepping forward with a laptop and several files. For months, he began, we've tracked unauthorized withdrawals, secret accounts, and even recorded conversations. He pressed play. The speakers crackled and then Jason's voice filled the room. She'll never know. The old woman's too blind to notice 1 million gone missing. Clara's mocking laughter followed. By the time she realizes, we'll be untouchable. Maya can keep her pity scraps. We're the real heirs. Gasps filled the hall. Relatives whispered, hands flew to mouths, eyes darted between Evelyn and the guilty pair. Jason's face flushed red with rage. You set us up, he shouted at Evelyn. How could you betray your own family? Evelyn's gaze was cold, unwavering. Her voice, though soft, cut sharper than a blade. No, Jason, you betrayed yourself. You thought you robbed me, but in the end, you only robbed yourselves. Clara shot forward, desperate, her tone shrill. She's manipulating all of you. This is all lies. We were protecting the family's wealth, not stealing it. But Evelyn silenced her with a single raised hand. Protecting? She echoed, her voice dripping with disdain. Is that what you call it when you laugh at me behind my back? When you conspire to bleed my husband's legacy dry? The lawyer stepped in once more. And to be clear, Evelyn has pressed charges. The police are already waiting outside. As if on cue, uniformed officers appeared in the doorway. Jason's jaw dropped, his bravado finally crumbling. Clara's face twisted in horror, her icy composure gone. No, you can't do this. We're your blood, Jason shouted, struggling as the officers grabbed his arms. Clara tried to lunge for Evelyn, tears streaking down her face. Please, Evelyn, we didn't mean, we thought, but Evelyn didn't flinch. Her eyes remained locked on them, steady, cold. I gave you every chance to choose honor over greed, and every time, you chose yourselves. Now, you'll live with the consequences. The hall rang with silence again as the officers dragged Jason and Clara out, their cries fading into the distance. And for the first time in years, Maya stood tall. She wasn't the timid girl they once dismissed. She wasn't the shadow they expected her to remain. She stood at Evelyn's side, shoulders squared, her grandmother's hand resting gently over hers. Evelyn turned to her, her eyes softening. Wealth isn't just money, child. It's knowing when to strike and when to forgive. One day, you'll understand. The family shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some looked at Maya with newfound respect, others with envy. But no one dared speak, not after what they had just witnessed. Then, Evelyn leaned back, her voice calm but carrying a weight that silenced even the whispers. And there's one more truth to reveal. The lawyer blinked, confused. Mrs. Hawthorne? Evelyn smiled faintly, her eyes glittering with a secret only she knew until now. The $1 million Jason and Clara thought they stole. She paused, letting the silence stretch. It never existed. The room froze. What? Maya whispered, her eyes wide. It was a decoy, Evelyn explained. A trust I invented to test the character of those who claimed to love my late husband. And as you've seen, Jason and Clara failed that test spectacularly. Gasps and stunned murmurs rippled through the hall. Evelyn continued, her voice steady, triumphant. The real fortune, everything my late husband and I built, everything I've protected, was always meant for you, Maya. Safe, untouched, waiting for the one who proved herself worthy.